I'm going to ask you not to be so biased because you love this owner so much. I need you to be objective and talk about Fierceness on his merits for the Classic because he's obviously developed into the top 3-year-old in the country. We talked a lot earlier this year about how he was an in and outer and run great one race and then stink up the joint. I thought he was a little bit faint hearted. I think he's proved me wrong in the last couple of races. The Jim Dandy and the Travers were both really good, really, I thought, gutsy efforts. But Tink, how do you evaluate that, and then how do you project it forward for the Classic?
Yeah, I think that you and most observers are likely wrong about Fierceness having matured out of his faint-hearted indications earlier in his career. I still think that he's a feast or famine horse. What I think's happened in the last two races is that he has gotten almost perfect trips, good post positions outside, and John Velasquez has rode him beautifully both times. Look, I also think that he has another limitation that almost no one is talking about or is likely to talk about because he just won the Travers at 10 furlongs. And that is that I don't think he really wants 10 furlongs. I think he's better around 9 furlongs. And I think he was sort of at the end of his tether, at the end of the Travers. And as I pointed out in a tweet around the time when I was reviewing the Travers, consider that Fierceness himself covered the first half mile in fractions of 24 flat, 48 and 3. And all he was doing was stalking Batten Down, who's not a particularly good horse, nice horse, but he's not a grade one horse at this stage. And Fierceness just blew by him and was able to hold Torpedo Anna safe. I mean, it was a very good effort, but it was a perfect trip for that horse. And I maintain that if he is put into tight quarters, especially, down on the inside or between horses, that there is a very good chance that he's going to revert to his old ways and fold his tent. So in my view, there are two big question marks about Fierceness in the Breeders' Cup Classic. The first is he going to get the kind of clean, beautiful trip, psychologically stress-free trip that he's gotten the last two times? I think that's pretty unlikely, though it could happen. And even if he does, is he going to show his best in a strongly run 10 furlongs, where you have Ryan Moore pushing City of Troy, where Forever Young is also going to benefit from a test of stamina, and who knows what other horses are going to be in there with natural speed. It's hard to see that it's going to be anything like the Travers in terms of pace. So I'm quite skeptical of him in this Classic.
Yeah, and the wonderful thing about our business is that if you say that a horse isn't going to perform, you're going to be right more times than not. So, which I can totally see. I mean, I've been betting against Fierceness, since his third race of his life, and basically pointing to his inconsistency, and we've even called him the little girl with the curl, because when he's good, he's great, and when he's bad, he's horrid. And I think whether it's through good placement or through a little bit of luck as far as his draw and strategies of other horses in the race, he has moved up in my mind as far as his ability. Do I think that if he wins the Breeders' Cup Classic, that we personally will breed to him as a stallion? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that he's got enough inconsistencies in his racing career, and also a son of City of Light, and just not sure yet whether or not that would be appealing for us as a commercial breeder. But there will be a lot of people who are going to breed to Fierceness, win, lose, or draw out of this race. But I think, like everything else, Tink, and Joe and I talk about it all the time. It's one thing to look at a horse's resume at face value and say, this horse won a grade one, this horse placed in a grade two, etc. But if you dig deeper and you look to see really who was in the race and what the conditions were of that race. And, you know, did a horse finish third in a grade 2? That's great. But when you realize that it was scratched down to a 4-horse field, so, you know, finishing second to last, does that really have the same kind of panache to it? I think that as an I'm going off on a tangent, but as an industry, I think that we get very seduced into just looking at what the bullet points were of a horse's resume and not digging into it. And I would caution people as to whoever wins this year's classic, that they really dig into the horse, you know, as to whether or not they should want to breed and perpetuate the genes. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because that's one of the things that we're going to talk about next, which is, you know, genetics and whether or not horses not only need to run a certain number of times to deem themselves, you know, good enough to be in the breeding shed, or is it explosiveness? And Tink, you've been very outspoken about, you know, a lot of these stallions and whether or not they should retire. And as an owner, I can tell you that sometimes you need to retire a horse when it's at the top of its game, because there's still shine on the apple and people are still excited about a horse, as opposed to if he runs a lackluster 5th in his last race and all of a sudden people are very quick in this microwave environment to spin and look elsewhere.